Dr. Dana Tassone with participants in HFT 6228, a graduate course in hospitality and tourism management. And today's discussion is about chapter 6 and has to do with management ethics, commonly referred to as business ethics. And I have a story. When I was an MBA student, the school I went to paralleled, emulated, if you will, what was then and still is today known as one of the best business schools, graduate schools in the country, and that was Harvard. So our curriculum matched the curriculum that was used at that institution. And during the time that I was a student, a public outcry arose that MBA graduates were causing organizations to do damage to members of society, and that this was a result of their training, because they were trained to be analytical sharks, and that they were making recommendations that resulted in less than ethical decisions. So in response, at the time, Harvard decided that it would make a course in business ethics a required course as part of the MBA curriculum. And I had completed my MBA. We didn't have a course in business ethics. I completed my MBA, but when I went back for an MS degree in HRM, the course at my institution had become a requirement, so I had to take a business ethics course. And the universe, working as it does, blessed me with a guy, newly appointed assistant professor, grad school, lawyer, who was charged with teaching this course. And as it turned out, he became one of my academic mentors, and we do work together even to this day. And of course, just like everybody else, I would complain about having to take this course, thinking that the institution was trying to tell me what my value systems should be. And to this day, among people, especially younger people, they start such a course with an indignant attitude, blatantly indignant attitude, and because they think, just as I thought, that some prof was going to instill proper values into them. And of course, you know that's impossible. So we are who we are. So what one story I tell people, and I taught business ethics. When I used to work for a B school, I taught business ethics for years. I don't teach it now. And but just picture a guy, if you will. Picture a guy. We're going to criticize this guy, so we didn't choose a lady. We'll do a guy. And he's a nice guy. He's a family guy. He has kids. He's an active member in the community. He participates in extracurricular activities at his church. He coaches kids in youth leagues. He's a good neighbor. He's overall a good citizen. He even obeys the speed limit when he drives. and he's a good husband. And he takes his, and he has a good job. He takes his fancy car to work, leaving his house where the neighbors all love him, driving through the community where the community people all love him, because he deserves it. Parks his car in his reserved spot at the office, climbs the elevator, takes the elevator up to his corner executive office overlooking the city, and proceeds to engage in decision making that generates less than favorable outcomes for employees, for competitors, for vendors, for customers even. And he does this in the name of upholding his duty to the shareholders of the organization. At the end of the day, he doesn't believe he's doing anything wrong. He believes it's business, just business, nothing personal. And at the end of the day, climbs into his fancy car, drives home, and resumes his life as a nice guy, as a community guy, a civic-minded guy. And he, let's say, is a Harvard MBA, and he's just doing what he was trained to do before they required this ethics schools. And he finds it perfectly acceptable what he does for a living, as well as all the wonderful things he does in his personal life. And the reason that he can accept all of this is that he's not really aware of the impact of the types of things that sometimes executives are encouraged to do by shareholder groups. And so what happens is a tragedy occurs, not to him, but a tragedy occurs, and his corporation is devastated by a natural disaster. And as a result of that natural disaster, he has to embark on recovery mode to salvage as best he can the assets of the business. And in so doing, he finds himself, let's say it's a hurricane or a tornado, he finds himself sitting in a devastated area, no electricity, no comfort utilities, and he finds himself in the dark at night, sitting among the few executives that have not been let go. And nobody dies in this story. So, and his job, of course, is to do whatever he can to rebuild the structures of his SBUs, his strategic business units, his SBUs, to get that organization back in business. And the goal, of course, is to do this in the shortest period of time as possible. And in the meantime, he's orchestrated the layoff of 90% of the staff members, and he has, of course, his properties. Let's say it's a hospitality company. His properties are out of business. He needs to restructure them, and he needs a way to manipulate the insurance companies to fund his rebuilding. And in the process, his personal life starts to blur with his professional life. And sometimes a person like this has a shift in thinking. And when that shift occurs, he's not the same person because he has had a life-altering event. And we call that a paradigm shift. Now, when a person takes a business ethics course, do they get a paradigm shift? Of course they don't. Do those of us who have experienced various forms of tragedy realize paradigm shifts? Unfortunately, I have to tell you from experience, yes. Yes, life will cause us, if we're aware, well, it'll give us the awareness, it'll hit us over the head with it. It'll give us the awareness to shift our paradigms, our realities of the world, about who we are, what we do, and how that impacts everybody around us. So, the chapter describes the activities within an organization that is proactive, as we've discussed before. A proactive organization would tend to be one that operates at a high level of ethical conduct, and the concepts of ethics leak into everything the organization does, from its strategic planning process, which would include moral audits and social audits, as well as the establishment of codes of ethics, the establishment of ethics committees, a collection of peers to ensure that decision makers in organizations do things that minimize the harm to individuals and maximize the good for all parties involved. And these paradigm shifts, this way of thinking, this type of professional proactive management is the responsibility of every manager, and it extends, obviously, to the responsibilities of managers in our industry, hospitality managers. The chapter goes on to give you a very succinct explanation of all of that. And the book goes on, the chapter goes on to tell us, to give us a framework of concepts associated with business ethics. Ethics, the field of ethics, is a branch of philosophy. It's distinguished as being a branch called normative philosophy. Normative, taken from the norm, the root word norm, and the word norm, from a philosophical perspective, is intended to mean appropriate for most individuals. The psychologists, of course, took that definition of normative and extended it to a statistical concept which indicates statistically significant majority of individual behaviors. But in both cases, the word normative suggests judgment, a form of judgment, right and wrong, perhaps. In the book, you saw a diagram that had three circles, a little circle, a bigger circle, a big circle, all inside of each other. And the little circle and each circle represents a law, a type of law. And the little circle is the legal law, and the bigger circle is the ethical law, and the big circle constitutes the moral law. So, and the book tells us that the legal law is codified. It's a code of behavior within society. It consists of right and wrong, do, don't. That's the legal law. A broader type of law would be considered the ethical law, and the ethical law is established by our professional peers. And the ethical law provides guidelines, not rules, guidelines for appropriate behavior as a group. And the ultimate law, the highest law, is called the moral law. And the moral law is mandated within each single individual. So legal law, behavior in society; ethical law, behavior within a profession; and the moral law, personal standards, inside standards of behavior. Big circle, little representation; little circle, big representation. And then the chapter goes on to identify the major schools of thought in ethics. And the tools that it provides us with are tools used from a proactive perspective to evaluate potential decisions. And if I haven't been clear already, the higher you go in your career, the span of responsible authority broadens, right? And so more and more people are impacted by your decisions as you climb the ranks. A no-brainer, right? And so a proactive organization will, in fact, have a code of ethics in place and live by them. Will, in fact, have established an ethics board, ethics committee, and will proactively evaluate the potential decisions being made, and that will be done based on moral tests that are borrowed from the field of normative philosophy. And these tests for behavior fall within two camps: the formalist camp and the consequentialist camp. The formalist camp is concerned with the rightness of a behavior regardless of the consequences. Consequentialist camp is concerned with doing the most good and doing the least harm with every decision. Two separate thoughts. And in actual practice, these two thoughts are applied in terms of evaluating decisions. Now, let's say it's a reactive scenario. Let's say that an organization makes a policy or engages in a practice, and that practice may be construed or even is challenged by someone in society to be unethical. Well, now these same tests are used to judge the behavior from various standpoints. The book gives us an example of overbooking in lodging properties and in travel organizations, airlines. And it walks us through the applications of these tests to that practice. And of course, the emphasis in the text, in the book, is that it's possible for something to be legal, yet be unethical and immoral, and it's possible for something to be ethical and not legal and maybe not moral. And it's also possible for something to be moral and ethical, but not legal. So moral always equals ethical. Ethical does not always equal moral, and neither equals legal. If you give that some thought, it'll make a little sense. There was a guy, an economist named Milton Friedman, and he gave us the what became to be known as the myth of amoral business. And he said, interestingly, the business of business is to do business. Thus, a business has no responsibility to society. Its only responsibilities are two things: to pay taxes and obey the law. And you can see where this is going. They pay taxes. Those taxes support the government. The government makes the laws. And if society thinks business is doing something bad, make a law. And businesses will follow that law, adhere to that law, because one of their two responsibilities is to obey the law. Now, you know from previous discussions where that leads, and it has led to the current state of business regulation, as we see. In the end, another interesting, I think, discussion in the chapter has to do with the viewpoints of American corporations. The definition of a corporation was established in the landmark case of Dartmouth College v. Woodward, and then Chief Justice Thurgood Marshall declared the definition of a corporation as an artificial being existing only in contemplation of law. It's invisible, it's intangible, and it exists in contemplation of law. From that, as we've already discussed, so you have that landmark precedent. From that, you have a continuum with two polarities of interpretations. And the two polarities are called the legal creationist viewpoint and the legal recognition viewpoint. And the chapter explains how that works. Legal creationists basically say that the law, that the corporation is created by government and exists for the purpose of serving society. And when it ceases to serve society, the corporation, the government, the legislation can make that corporation cease to exist. And the opposite polarity is that corporations exist merely in the contemplation of the law. They're merely recognized as legal entities, and they have no duty to serve society, with the exception of the same stuff Milton Friedman told us: to obey the law and to pay their taxes. So what does this have to do with human resource management? Answer is obvious. It has everything to do with it, because the HR people, the HR practitioners, are the balance people. And the HR practitioners balance satisfying the needs of the shareholders, and they balance organizational and corporate polarities, and they are charged with being managers' managers. They are a manager's manager. They know as much more about management than any manager knows. They bestow that knowledge on the manager, thus giving him or her freedom to manage professionally as a result of that knowledge. We're out of time. That's just a few insights about chapter 6, and I'll see you in the next.